Hello. Here again. I'm so excited. It wakes me up in the morning to get into this book, The Choice by Samuel Yette. Now, I just read the foreword by Barbara Reynolds. Now, I'm going to read the preface. Okay. A quarter century has passed since The Choice was first published in 1971. Much has happened in the interim, but nothing has happened to reverse or substantially mitigate the book's original message. It is that African Americans are in a survival crisis in America, that racism, poverty, greed, war, technology, and the erosion of the constitutional rights have conspired to endanger a people to whom the society has never granted human and social value consummate with security. Indeed, developments of the last quarter century have increasingly made the book's original reports and concerns undeniable realities in the lives of many millions of individuals and groups. Published by Cottage Books since 1982, this is the 14th printing in soft cover and the 11th printing in cloth. Every word that appeared in the original text has remained in place in which subsequent edition, including this one. For good reason, I hope I understood in 1971, as I do now, that decent minds tend to resist such indecencies as this book uncovers, however compelling the evidence. For good reason, I hope. Oh, oh. The original publisher, G.P. Putman Sons, required thorough documentation, of course. Otherwise, it would never have agreed to publish The Choice. My editor at Putman's was overwhelmed by documented threats to constitutional government and proof that the unconstitutional war in Vietnam and the profiteers from that war cared little about the well-being of the nation itself. But given the documentation, he suggests that my title and subtitle focus too narrowly on the issue of race. And granting my editor his due, the choice is still alone in documenting how extreme racists in the U.S. and greedy profiteers who demand the killing of millions of human beings in Southeast Asia are indeed one and the same. For many readers, Chapter 4 provides the best paradigm for their comprehending subsequent U.S. invasion of, say, Grenada, Panama, Somalia, and Iraq. Intense and deeply rooted racism, poverty, and economic dislocation, a sophisticated police state, a federally sponsored drug culture, and abortion with its inevitable dehumanization, where all arrows pointed to genocide at home as well as abroad. My ultimate focus and title, therefore, became the issue of Black survival in America. Nevertheless, many students find the choice helpful in the study of law, economics, public health, psychology, and even education. Racism, of course, has been constant in America history. They try to tell us different, don't they? It was there a founding of the United States of America. The war between the states did not end it, nor did the Reconstruction, legal segregation, or the Civil Rights struggle. The recent and current angry white male backlash, armed militant uprising, paramilitary sieges, and proliferation of racist propaganda, as discussed in Chapter 3. Signal dangerous civil and race based division. Scapegoats continue in season. The new Republican majorities in both houses of Congress seek to undo civil rights gains with a new deconstruction, spearheaded by Republican House Speaker Newt Gingrich and his so-called contact with America. In human terms, any one-sided contract is bogus on its face. Additionally, the unilateral Republic contract is the new version of Richard Nixon's trickle down, Ronald Reagan's alleged voodoo, George Bush's adopted voodoo, and supply side economic con gains. All of these contributed to the so called war on poverty, actually being a war on the poor, as detailed in Chapter 2. Depletion of the nation's middle class has resulted in more people in poverty now than when Lyndon B. Johnson began the Office of Economic Opportunity in 1964. A greedily technocracy propelled by cybernetics and the information highway increased the obsolescence of millions of ordinary citizens, disproportionately African Americans. Meanwhile, as discussed in Chapter 5, Black men and increasingly Black women are disproportionately incarcerated. Okay, now you're taking away the jobs and you're putting more people in prison. What's left? The current terms contract on America implies that 1. Previous attempts of the greedy and the powerful to take full control have now, in fact, been accomplished. 2. That in the usual mob terminology, somebody has taken out a contract for the disposal of some others who remain. The use of language characteristic of the criminal underworld is instructive and must be accepted as a genuine statement of intent. It is an open notice to ordinary Americans, regardless of color, but a specific warning to Black America. On October 16, 1995, Black men responded to the contract warning and its climate by answering a call to Washington Mall by Muslim minister Louis Farrakhan. Thus, counterposed are the contract on Black America versus the Black man's massive response, as symbolized by the enormous and spiritually moving Million Man March. The call for Million Man March came in search of atonement, whose vitality lay in the extent to which the House of Black America is in disarray and in crying need to reconstruction. A federal report in 1995 confirmed my concern in Chapter 5 that the plague of drugs and addiction is a basic source of destructive crime, lowered life expectancy, and erosion of constitutional rights. Therefore, aside from the pledges taken by the entire multitude, perhaps nothing at the Million Man March was more significant than the presence of California gang leaders who joined hands to announce their truce and to renounce gang violence. The most recent previous printing of the choice featured 3 photographs on the cover of the Ku Klux Klan, an impoverished neighborhood, and the Vietnam War Memorial. They symbolize racism, poverty, and war, respectively. But as Barbara Reynolds insightfully notes in her foreword to this edition, Black survival is also threatened by infanticide, Black men against their Black brothers instead of Black men for Black people. The response of 1 million or more Black men to the evident crisis becomes, if not a sure sign of hope, at least the presence of critical mass. Still an issue, however, is whether there are sufficient self-love, alertness, unity, organization, and resources to counter the contract long ago issued and regularly renewed against Black America. Thus, as the book concludes, the final choice in African American survival and the survival of America herself belong to Black people in America. The final test of whether survival is deserved and likely is whether Black people and the totality of Americans love and care enough for each other to save ourselves. Samuel F. Yette, May the 1st, 1996. Now that a lot has happened since then. And you get a chance, look him up. They has a few things on him, his biography, and then it directs you to other African Americans that we can learn from, read about, emulate. It's about time that we start acting like our forefathers and taking their heed, taking their lead, and listen to them, because they was there. Their record is there to see. We already know the outcome. I would disagree, but what does the tape show? So I have the forward and the preface. Now we're going to read the introduction, a question of survival. Very interesting. I'm loving this book more and more. I'm going to read this book. We're going to read this book together. All right. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day, evening, and I hope you comment and please subscribe.